Marketing Communications Manager at Data Conversion Laboratory, and I'll be your moderator today. Before we get started, I wanted to let you know we will allow time at the end of the webinar for questions and answers. So please write your questions in the chat area as they come to mind. If we don't have time to answer them all, we will make them available on our website. Next slide, please. For those of you who are not familiar with DCL, we convert and organize content to create electronic documents, populate databases, publish on the web, and basically get it ready for tomorrow's technology. Next slide, please. DCL services help you refine your document conversion strategy, identify document redundancy, extract metadata, and transform legacy and future documents for real needs, today and in the future. Next slide. We serve a very broad client base. Next slide, please. Spanning all industries. Next slide, please. Today, we are thrilled to introduce Rob Hanna, President, Precision Content Authoring Solutions. Rob is an expert in structured authoring and content management. He holds a designation from AIM.org as a Certified Enterprise Content Management Specialist and is a named fellow of the Society for Technical Communication. Rob is a member of the OASIS DITA Technical Committee and executive member of the first Canadian chapter of AIM in Toronto. Rob's company employs a team of skilled information architects and technical communicators to help organizations make their information easier to use. Without further ado, welcome Rob.
Thank you very much, Adam, and good day, everyone. So our organization, as Adam said, helps organizations make their information easier to use. We are what we call content transformation specialists. So in my time as a technical communicator and information architect, I've worked with many large companies for their data implementations and content management migration strategies. And working with clients now, we find that oftentimes when an organization gets to the point where they can't find information, information's difficult to use, processes are breaking down, they're out of compliance, there are problems with their content, that the first people that they call when they encounter these issues is their IT department, looking for new or better tools. So they'll trade out their Live Link for SharePoint and then SharePoint for something else, all with the view to try to get their content more findable so they can have a better experience and get at the information that they need to use. And so for the last couple of years, I've been trying to get people to put the brakes on. Really, when we talk about problems with content, we're not talking just technology. In fact, the technology is only a small piece of the problem. What oftentimes tends to be a bigger problem is the content itself, and coming up with a comprehensive content strategy that will help an organization get from point A to point B. So before they start any technology, we say let's look at your content strategy. Let's examine what it is that you really need and how you're going to get there. And to do that, we need to look at several different factors, and we break them into three. So first, we have utility of information. This is the form of information itself. How useful is it in its current form, and what sort of usefulness do you require for your information? Is all your content right now in PDF or Word documents or HTML? Is it in XML? Are you looking for a utility for conversion, localization, to get more reuse out of your content? So the utility really talks about the format of its content primarily, and this is very much a technology piece as well. What is the right framework, and how do we configure that framework to optimize what your needs are for usefulness or for utility. The next piece is maintainability. This is around the process of managing your content and your content lifecycle. If you don't have good processes and technology to manage those processes and automate your processes, then your solution is going to break down. So utility and maintainability really look at the form and the technology around your content for authoring, for managing, for publishing, and for organizing your content, finding your content. And in a lot of times, content strategy ends here. We look at how are we going to implement data, how are we going to configure our CCMS, what's our taxonomy going to look like, what are our controlled vocabularies, how do we set up our workflows. These are very much utility and maintainability and very, very heavy on the technology side. But my experience working with several large data implementation projects was that we could really nail utility and maintainability, have the best tools and the best engineered solutions, but still fail to meet our objectives. And that has to do with the usability of the content, how the content is written. So we look at these three aspects and we assess an organization's readiness for content management, for migration, based on these three primary aspects of utility, maintainability, and usability. And when we have this, we have a view to what the solution really needs to be. So when we move from authoring our documents in FrameMaker or Word, and we're looking to move to more topic-based authoring, we really need to examine all of these. All right, so the usability, is the content written in such a way that it'll easily convert to a new topic-based type of paradigm for writing? Does your organization have information governance and other processes around your information that will sustain the information for years to come and help you scale your solution beyond your specific department? And you know, is the solution going to be targeted appropriately for your content contributors and the different people working within your content life cycle? So we're going to start now with our first survey question to get a bit of a feel as to where you're all at in terms of structured authoring within your organization. So Adam, can you please post the survey questions for us? So your poll should be coming up now.
Yep, Rob, I just posted it.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So Rob, with a little bit more than 80% of the vote, we have 33% indicating none of the above, 30%, nope, 29% indicating DITA, 16% indicating structured authoring but not XML, 13% saying specialized in DITA, and 10% saying XML but not DITA.
Excellent. What a good range of participants in today's session. So thank you very much, Adam. That's really quite illuminating. For those of you who are in DITA or have been following DITA, you may know that DITA is one of the fastest or more rapidly adopted XML standards since OASIS has been tracking this type of work. So it really is gaining really rapid adoption. And I've been a DITA XML guy for many, many years, going back to 2001 when I first encountered it. And I instantly saw the value in DITA XML, and you know, I very much latched on to opportunities where I could work with DITA or help organizations implement DITA within their organization. So, you know, among the benefits, of course, is that it's completely agnostic in terms of technology, in terms of subject matter, in terms of industry. It's finally a standard framework for technical communication, which is something that back in the early 2000s was seriously lacking here in North America. Again, it's gaining really rapid adoption, and of course, it's extensible across industries. Pardon me. But as I noted, there really seemed to be a lack of consistent, robust authoring methodology around it. So DITA on its own is not a methodology, but a framework. There are many really good books out there on how to style and how to write for DITA, but the DITA standard itself is while it's prescriptive, it's still very open, and a lot of different organizations interpret the semantics of DITA in very different ways, if they consider the semantics even at all. So from here, I began investigating other writing methodologies. What can we use to make writing with DITA easier to use? And this is where I landed on information mapping, and got very involved with the information mapping organization, became a certified consultant, and really dived really deep into information mapping and how it would work with DITA XML. Of course, DITA XML and the whole notions of information typing really do have their roots in information mapping, as do the sort of topic-based architecture for writing. Now, information mapping didn't necessarily invent these things, but they really tied them together, and we see it reflected in DITA today. So what I liked about the information mapping framework is it's agnostic as well, used in enterprise writing in companies around the globe. It's been around, it's been taught since the 1980s, so it's been out there for a good 30 years, and it's got a true global reach, certainly within the English language. And probably the most important thing here is it's teachable to any audience or practitioner. So information mapping has been taught and deployed as a word-based solution for companies working with non-technical writers to be able to allow them, or to encourage them to write their content in a structured manner for better readability and better consumption of that content. But here, information mapping was lacking in its technology delivery framework. So it was very, very difficult to collaborate on teams for authoring content, particularly working with Word, trying to break up topics and reassemble them in Word with multiple authors was next to, well, certainly was impractical. Publishing, managing the content lifecycle, all these things were very, very difficult to do with information mapping. So we had these two, we had the framework, we had the methodology, but we still had to find a way to bring them together. So this is where our solution comes in. So we've looked at the information mapping methods, and we've adapted them to better suit structured authoring in XML for better collaboration, content lifecycle management. We're certainly able to mark up content and apply metadata and taxonomies on our content that allow us to more easily publish and reuse content and establish a single source for authoring. And of course, the vast multi-channel publishing capabilities that XML has to offer. Now, excuse me, as we note here, we are not an information mapping international organization, and our methods are not tied to information mapping international in any way. So this is our take, or our adaptation of these methods for precision content methodology with XML or DITA. So looking at DITA itself as well, is that it needed some adaptations to really suit the methodology too. So of course, DITA is very easy to work with, to develop and to customize through specialization and constraints. So it was really quite easy to implement constraints and specializations, templates and style sheets to have it work with our methodology. And as well, my work on with OASIS on the DITA technical committee and working with the lightweight DITA subcommittee, we're really seeing how well this approach to authoring is suited to improvements we are seeing coming in through DITA 1.3, which is to be released towards the end of this year, and then the next release, which is lightweight DITA. Very, very well suited to our methodology. And I'm going to start walking you through what that methodology is now. So understanding the methodology, practices, and principles starts with an understanding of two very distinct forms of language arts. So we've got language arts for personal response versus language arts for information. Language arts for personal response is information that's meant to be read versus information that's meant to be used. And they're both very much structured in different ways. Of course, both of these types of communication or language arts are employed and are crucial to operating an enterprise. But when we start talking about the type of structured content and the semantics that we're looking for, we're really, really referring to language arts for information, which really looks at technical communication best practices for modular structure, concise, direct vocabulary, etc. So this is really information that's reader-driven and to be used. Now, I like to sort of contrast this to try to understand how these two things are different when we look at an application, a job application. When you're applying for a job, there are typically two documents that you're submitting. One is a cover letter and the other is a resume. Now the cover letter and the resume may have a lot of overlapping information in it where you're talking about your experience and where you've worked and specific skills that you have, but obviously both are written very, very differently. So your cover letter is intended for personal response. You're trying to make a connection with the hiring manager to convince the hiring manager that you're the right person for that job. So you're using language arts for personal response to author that covering letter. Of course, the resume itself is language arts for information. It's highly structured. It's not addressed to anyone in particular. It's written in a very terse and very well structured manner. And in fact, a lot of organizations are able to, take in resumes and parse that information directly into a database for later reference. So we can see that there are different utility, different usability for these different types of information. So, of course, language arts for information, an easy one to imagine would be your typical IKEA instructions, right? Where they're very, very direct, very simple to understand. Now, what I really want to get across the point here is that we're really not talking about quality of writing at all. We're talking about style. We're talking about structure. We're talking about how this information is written. So if we were to imagine trying to write IKEA instructions for personal response, this might be what you get. Of course, that's not terribly useful. It's very well written and it's enjoyable to read, but I'm not going to be building any credenzas with this particular set of instructions. So from there, understanding, we're working really in language arts for information. What does that mean to us? We're talking about content. What is content? And there are a lot of different terms that get thrown around, and really to understand what it is that we're talking about when we're talking about structured content, we need to understand where it comes from. So, of course, within our organization, we have data, lots and lots and lots of data. In its rawest form, without context, they'll just be numbers or figures or fragments of information. Now, when they get assembled or aggregated into information systems, that's where this data then becomes information. we're adding other data points to create context to give us information. And this is great for people who understand it and understand the information systems. But for our customers who need to consume this information, we need to contextualize that for them. So we need to take this information and write it for our audience, put it together in a way that our audience can actually use it. Now, once we have this content and we're distributing it to our users, then our audience is able to take that content and apply it to their own knowledge, to be able to really leverage that content and know what to do with it. So when we're talking about content, we're not talking about the information or information systems, but how that information is written and delivered to our customers so that they can impart knowledge, or they can get knowledge from that content and be able to use it. So with our precision content methodologies, they really are based on scientific research in many different areas that help us to understand how the brain works, how the brain is able to take in information, process that information, retain that information in a way that is optimal for consumption of that information. So when we look at this, we're looking at a couple of different cornerstones or pieces to understanding, analyzing that information before we even start writing that information. And that's to look at and identify the types and structure of the content that we're going to write, that we're going to create topics, and of course we're going to take topics and put them into maps to produce publications. But we're really looking at a much more lower level of analysis on the type of content and how all of these pieces come together. So with each information type, typing every block or section, if you will, or semantic section within a data topic, for instance, we look at what type of information that is, and for each type we have specific rules and semantics for authoring that content and for presenting that content. So within precision content, we have 5 distinct information types. And for those of you who are familiar with data, you're going to recognize some of these information types as topic types, but we look at them both as topic types and block types as well. So we have reference, principle, concept, task, and process. Of course, principle and process are 2 information types that we don't find in data. Now, if we look at information mapping, now, information mapping itself has between 6 and 7 information types. Pardon me. So up until the late 90s, there were 7 information types, and more recently 6 information types, which are fact, principle, concept, procedure, process, and structure. So we've looked at those information types and the semantics behind those information types, and we've been able to distill them down into 5 really truly distinct information types for the purposes of precision content. Now, to understand these information types, as it was, information types have been a typical sort of metaphor or explanation I look to is the flight safety briefing. So we see these types of information every day in different forms. One way certainly is when you're sitting down, you're getting ready to take off, and the stewardess, or sorry, the flight attendant will give you a flight safety briefing to familiarize you with the aircraft and to inform you what to do in the event of an emergency. So when we're talking reference information, this is information that is factual, very passive information, just facts, just reference information. So we'll be flying at an altitude of 60,000 feet. A principle, which is always put on your oxygen mask before assisting other passengers with their oxygen masks. So this is to inform as to what to do or what not to do. Then of course we have a task for opening an emergency exit. Look out the window to ensure there are no hazards, and then pull the lever and push out the exit door. When we're looking at process, very similar to task, except here we're not telling people what to do, but how something works. So in this case, in the event of loss of cabin pressure, an oxygen mask will drop from the overhead compartment, describing what happens under certain circumstances. And then finally, concept. We are a member of the Star Alliance group of airlines. So not a great example of concept, and in fact, concepts are, in the precision content world, quite rare birds in terms of information types. So our information types are, when we're typing content, working with content, we're going to see a lot more reference, principle, task, and process than we will typically concept, which of course for many DITA practitioners and organizations using DITA, that's pretty much the opposite of how we see it, where we see most content is shoveled into concept type topics, given the looseness of the semantics and how open it is to be able to accommodate different types of information. So this is how we type information. All information is typed according to one of these 5 different types of information. Now, when we look at a DITA task, for instance, the entire topic is not task-based information, even in DITA. So with DITA, of course, we have prerequisites, we have postrequisites, which represent blocks of principle type of information. We have context and we have result, which really refer to reference type information. And we'll see that there's a mix of different types of blocks of information in different types of topics, which is normal and to be expected. So the next aspect to working with this content is working through or thinking about content classification. So I've got just a really quick exercise to take you through. So I'd like you all to take just a piece of paper and a pen if you've got one handy, and we're gonna start a quick demonstration of how we organize information for better understanding and for better retrieval of that information. So with that, we're going to get started. So I'm going to put up a series of words, and you need to look at these words and try to memorize as many as you can without writing them down. So don't write any words down on your paper just yet. I want you to look at the screen, memorize the words, and then when the words disappear from the screen, I want you to take 20 seconds to write down as many words as you can remember. There they go. Now, so please pick up your pen and write down as many of the words as you can remember from that list. I'll give you 10 more seconds. Okay, pens down, please. So typically, and I've given this presentation many times, what we'll find is that most people will get 5, 6, maybe 7 words on their piece of paper, and they'll by and large have most of them will be correct, although we find in a number of cases people actually invent words or misread words. So the first thing that we need to do when we're looking at these words is we need to filter out all of the noise. So the previous page we saw different fonts, different sizes, different colors, and as much as we try to look past those different attributes on those different words and focus on what the words were saying, our brains couldn't help but look at the colors and the fonts and say, why is this bigger than the other? What's the significance of that font? And gee, that's a really nice font. I like that font, and blue really looks sharp. Anyway, you can't help but be assaulted with all of this additional input, which is not related to the content at all. So our first thing to do is to normalize and to ensure consistency with the information that we're looking at to ensure that we can better understand and comprehend it. The next thing that we do is that we look to break this information visually down into smaller groups or chunks. 7 plus or minus 2 is the rule of thumb, where more complex subjects or more complex concepts are limited to 5, where more common or everyday can be as high as 9. And our brains are able to store this information and process this information much easier than if we use more than or we go beyond that that particular threshold. And of course, when we're looking at the words, we're noticing and we're trying to organize them by similarities or relevance. So we're looking at how do these words relate to each other as a way to help understand what it is we're looking at and to memorize those words. And then finally, once we understand the relationships, we apply classification and labels to that information. And these are the 4 major steps that we use or are integral to our processes and to our methods for looking at information, how we present information to users, going through normalization, filtering out the noise, introducing consistency, grouping information into smaller groups of information for easier consumption, organizing based on the relevance, and then of course classifying and labeling that information. Now, what ends up happening is we get something that looks like this. So if you look at this, again, some of you may have more or less, but typically we're looking about 5 to 7 words with this particular example. Now, I'm going to have you do it one more time, this time with the information already organized for you, to see how many words you can memorize on the next screen. So again, pens down, please, and just spend 20 seconds looking at these words, and when the words disappear off the screen, you can start writing down the words that you remember. Okay, please pick up your pens and write down as many words as you can. I'll give you 30 seconds here. Give you 10 more seconds. And here is the list of words again. So have a look at what you've written down and what you see on the screen now. And what you should see is that you've remembered more words than you did previously. In fact, we find that people can typically remember as many as twice as many of these words than they could previously by applying these principles. Now these principles expand, or they can be applied to larger pieces of information, blocks of information, sentences, list items. Our brain handles a lot of this the same way that we did with just individual words. Each word, of course, representing a concept behind that word. So with these blocks, with typed information, we get what we call the structured building blocks of our information. All right, each piece of information is standardized in how it's written, how it's labeled, and how it's typed. And with this, it allows us to create information products from it, so assembling blocks into topics and then topics into maps for publication. So we can create one set of information from the same set of blocks. Of course, we can create other configurations, again, with the same types of blocks, but organized in different ways, or including, of course, more or fewer blocks for information delivery that is modular and derived from a single source. Now, working with this structured information serves really 2 fundamental sets of needs. So for the human brain, good, well-structured information helps us to more easily find, understand, use, and retain information. Now, with technology, having well-structured content allows us to facilitate better integration of our content with other sources of data or other systems. It facilitates a better search, filtering of information. Of course, having well-structured information allows us to process that information in different ways or render it for different types of delivery. And of course, it facilitates reuse as well, which is of course enabled through technology. So this next slide shows an example of one of our very early projects with the American Joint Committee on Cancer, where they came to us with a very unique type of problem, is that they had an 800-page cancer staging manual that was written in Word by a group of world-renowned oncologists and clinicians who would come together every 5 to 7 years to study the science and update this cancer staging manual, which is then used by physicians in hospitals and clinics around the world to help better communicate and derive a cancer stage, which of course determines prognosis as well as treatment options for a person's cancer. So we looked at the information. They wanted to go to DITA XML. That was that's what they stated that they needed, because they wanted to be able to reuse this information from the staging manual in electronic health records, cancer staging calculators, and other types of systems. But as much as they could try to just retype or transpose the information from the manual into these software applications, they kept getting unexpected results and less than satisfactory results for what was produced. So they thought that simply by going to XML, where they could systematically reuse this information, that would improve the veracity of the results that they were getting from these other applications. Now, when I came in, they actually, I looked at the content, I said, we can absolutely get this into DITA-FEW. But I don't think it's going to give you the results that you're looking for. Not because it's poorly written, but it's not written in such a way that it's going to easily facilitate the extraction of that information for other online systems. So I was given this particular passage of content, and I was asked to apply our methodologies to this content to better understand what a transformation of this content might look like. And of course, without being a cancer expert or having any experience in this field at all, was still able to go through and look at and identify problems with the content and come up with ways that they could be solved. Now, once we understand where those gaps are, then we go back to the subject matter experts to fill in those gaps. And then we need to find a way to better present that information and write that information for clarity and for presentation. So going through this and applying our methods, this is what we came up with. And this is a cancer staging table. This is what's called pathological node level. And it's one of 3 sets of tables that are used to stage a person's cancer. So when we look at this, we look at the just what we can measure very, very easily, reduction of word count, improvement reading score, and then when we look at it, we can see that it's obviously more scannable, more easy to use than it was before. So this is really what convinced them to kick off a project with us to look at transforming their cancer staging manual, bringing it into Precision Content or DITA XML with our team of writers. And they found this to be quite satisfactory. And the the specialized data that we created semantically specialized content for these cancer staging tables so that information then could be more easily extracted. So with that, we're going to move to our next survey question. Adam, if you don't mind, we're looking to see where are you at within your current set of content projects. Are you involved in conversion or migration, and where are you at with that?
So Rob, we're just a little bit over 60% of the attendees participate in the survey. We have 27% people indicating production,
Mm-hmm.
and 22% between content strategy,
Mm-hmm.
rewrite, and none of the above,
Mm-hmm.
and 9% with conversion.
Wonderful. Excellent. Excellent stuff. Thank you very much, Adam.
You're welcome.
Mm-hmm. So this leads into what we're talking about in terms of content transformation, content conversion, that organizations going through conversion or migration to a new system, a new CCMS, where these processes represent considerable disruption for the organization. This is where you want to be able to take the opportunity to consider transformation for your high-value content. Nobody, I think, would recommend transforming all of your content, but looking at some of your high-value content, especially that information or that content that has very new or complex requirements for creation, management, and delivery. So conversion and transformation can very easily coexist within the same project. We're working with DITA, which means that we can create maps that can accommodate transformed content with non-transformed data or converted data to be able to keep the lights on and to help with the ease of working through your content and looking at just what is possible through this transformation by moving to data, by moving to better structured authoring techniques. What can I really get out of my content? So it's a time now, going through these projects to consider what is a good target potentially for content transformation. All right, so I'm going to take you through just a brief introduction into some of the tools that we work with, that our teams work with clients with precision content. So our first tool is Oxygen. Oxygen was the first tool that we developed to work with precision content, where we were able to introduce a specialized framework, specialized publishing and templates for working with precision content. So I go to my templates, I can see that I've got the 5 different types of information that I presented earlier available to me as a template for a topic. So let's have a look at the process. So this is a full structural specialization based on a task, but that represents a process rather than a procedure. So we'll see some similarities such as context, and we have prerequisites, but we also have those, of course, are common with tasks. But when we get into process and the process detail, we're not working with steps so much as we're working with what we call stages. And each stage requires an actor who is going to perform one or more actions within each stage. So I'm going to pull that old pull the turkey out of the oven trick here, because people don't like to see me type for some reason. I don't know why, but and we are running a little bit short on time, so I'm just going to go in here and Voila. And validate, and validation is, so it's valid. All right, so we can see what a full procedure might look like. Now, I talked about working with blocks. So blocks are very much like a section within data. In fact, they're specialized from section. As well, we have what we know we call subblocks, which are help to support blocks of information. And as I'd mentioned before, all information types are, or all blocks are typed. So we can see right here the icon. This indicates that this is a fact or reference type. This, of course, is a principal type. As I'd mentioned, prereqs are a type of principal type of information. So this will be written and presented in such a way that it conveys that type of information. And we can see a number of stages with different actors performing different actions as well. So this is really the first tool that we started developing for our clients to accommodate precision content. But we work with other technology partners, and three of our very important technology partners right now are EasyData, SimplyXML, and Data Imprint. And they really provide a wide range of tools and options for us to be able to work with customers who are not necessarily within the tech writing departments or technical publication departments, but other parts of the enterprise where they need a little bit more guidance with authoring, where they don't want to be working with Oxygen. So that's where SimplyXML, SimplyData, and Simply Structured and EasyData really fit really well into our strategies, offering a very easy to use interface for non-technical writers. So I'm just going to save this up. I'm sorry. So I'm going to save this into our EasyData repository. Okay. And so from there, we'll go and we'll have a quick look at what this topic looks like now in the EasyData interface. Once my computer behaves, all right, there we go. Come into our precision content repository. Go to our dashboard. This is a very, very intuitive. This is the next generation EasyData tool that is just being launched by EasyData this month. But we'll start by going in and having a look at the authoring repository. We'll have a look at that topic that we just put in there. So we have this new process topic right here. So from here we can preview the content, and of course we can add comments to it as we want. We can look at the properties for this particular piece of content. And then we can even look at publishing this particular topic. But let's go into edit and show the editor here. Oops. I forgot to close the editor. Stand by. Now we'll go back. So this is a very, very easy to use interface for non-technical writers. So we look at this, and for instance, one of the custom pieces that we have as part of our specialization is what's known as an if-then and when-then tables, where we've created semantics to support the development of when-then and if-then tables. So we have a a custom interface that's been built by EasyData for us for our precision content approach, where we can insert our custom XML. So from in here, I can say, for instance, when the content, I can add a and the product, then the senior writer so when the content is ready and the product is, I want to add another row here, so I add another and. So when the product is not ready versus and the product is ready, then the senior writer waits, senior writer publishes, etc. And then I can, of course, add new rows for different conditions. But that's as simple as this type of interface is. Very, very intuitive. We can see here the different types, again, are displayed for the different types of information. I can easily set or change the block types if I need to within this interface. So this is our EasyData authoring. And with that, we're running, this has sort of been a quick demonstration of some of the tools that we use. Now, I'd like to take it back to you, Adam, and see if we have any questions.
Thank you, Rob. Very informative webinar indeed. Mm-hmm. And let me just pull up the questions real quick. Mm-hmm. And the first question that's come in is, what kind of training do you offer and how long does it take?
Okay, so for our customers, so we offer certainly training to our customers for precision content. This is really a turnkey type of solution. So training for a subject matter expert or reviewer is typically 1 day for tools and for processes. For our customers that are working in not necessarily DITA, but something like Simply Structured, the training is about 2 days for those types of content contributors. And then based on the complexity of the deployment, it can be then anywhere from 3 to 5 days for training for our customers to get them up to a level where they're comfortable working with the tools and with the writing methodologies.
Thank you. The next question has come in is, are you hiring technical writers?
Well, we right now we've got about a dozen writers working on various projects, but we are of course experiencing some moderate growth, so we are looking for writers from time to time, but currently we don't have any immediate openings.
Great, thank you. Let's just, at that point, that was all the questions that we received. Let's just hold it open for a couple more moments in case there's some last-second questions. In the meantime, I'd like to remind everyone that our next webinar is scheduled for tomorrow, Thursday, July 16th at 1 p.m. Eastern Time, titled Content Conversion Done Right Saves More Than Money. That's being presented by Greg Fagan, Sales Director at DCL. And the next question is coming is, what other tools other than EasyData? Can the person that just sent that in, can you clarify a little bit more, please? So what other tools do you use other than EasyData?
So we have EasyData and Oxygen, of course, which you saw. For different types of authoring repositories, we actually use SharePoint for some of our customer deployments, where we use SharePoint to store, and we use the SharePoint browser in Oxygen to turn it into sort of a poor man's CCMS. It works pretty decently, but EasyData is right now what we're working with a CCMS. And of course, we're working with the Doug Gorman and his folks at Simply XML on developing and being able to deploy precision content on their suite of tools of Simply Structured and Simply Data. But because this is a standard DITA type of set of specializations and constraints, any DITA-aware editor and any DITA-aware CCMS should be able to accommodate precision content tools and technologies.
Great, thank you. Thank you, Rob, for that.
Mm-hmm.
And that's been all the questions we've received today.
Okay.
So I would like to thank everyone for attending this webinar. This will conclude today's broadcast. You'll be able to access the recorded version of this webinar in the archive section of our website located at www.dclab.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.